I actually don't know if Colin remembers this, but I called him a couple months ago asking for access to the LiDAR data set because one of our partners at the University of Vermont got access to that for urban canopy for the Parks Department. So I figured, well, we do solar mapping, we should have access, but you know, one of the friendly professors at City College decided that this was competitive with his project. So we go through a lot of wrangling with local and municipal IT departments to try and get as much data as we can for free. So we get a lot from NOAA, we get a lot from NREL, we get a lot from municipalities. We've just started, because we've grown and have some big contracts now, we do pay for data. So it turns out that Microsoft, Google actually have a lot of data that's artifacts, and you can go to their providers, the LiDAR providers, etc., and get that. But it's a challenge. You just have to make a lot of phone calls.
You don't get all the New York City data that you would like to get?
Exactly. No, it's we have not gotten all the New York City data that we would like to get.
Would Colin like to respond?
I figured that would come up at some point. Yes, so I think, you know, at least I can speak for DoITT. I mean, there's other city agencies that manage, you know, geospatial data. We've opened up a treasure trove of data. I wouldn't say that we've, you know, distributed everything. When we do distribute it, it's never a cost associated. So the taxpayers have paid for the, you know, creation of the data, and we just give it away. So there's never a cost associated with it. You know, there's certain security concerns that, you know, limit our distribution of the data sets. So we have to go through, you know, essentially a review board before data can be released to the general public. You know, and there's always sort of, you know, the concern we don't want to be the next one by, you know, distribute data that's used for doing due diligence for, you know, targeting certain sites within the city. So, you know, I mean, what you can always do is you can use the Freedom of Information Act. You can FOIL the data sets from the city of New York, and generally the only way out of FOIL is to reference a security concern. So generally that's the only one we apply to holding back into the data sets. And for the LiDAR data sets, we actually did that collaboratively with CUNY, and CUNY actually was the one who wanted to hold back that data set.
Thomas, you're with the open source mapping movement, more or less. Do you think New York City is doing enough, is opening up enough?
I can't speak too specifically about New York City, but it's a really exciting time to be working in mapping. There's just so much big data out there that's being released by different government agencies. You know, New York's got its big apps competition. There's a massive amount of data through that. There's opendata.gov. There's the equivalent things happening in Europe as well. The UK is opening up a lot of data. So for people who are into mapping, it really is a fantastic opportunity right now.
Our data model is very much a commercial B2B business. We compile, we do the research, we maintain it, and we license it out to companies, everyone from Google to Facebook, Foursquare, Realtor.com. So these companies require extremely high quality for the amount of money they're paying us. Now, in terms of your question about, you know, where do we get our data, one way to answer that is we build it. Another way to answer it is we use multiple data sources depending on the product. So you take something like neighborhood boundaries. If you're trying to find where a neighborhood starts and stops, in some cases there might be public data that has been taxpayer funded that describes neighborhoods. That's very rare, but sometimes it exists. More often than not, we have to do a combination of human research. You could imagine discussions on blogs about where a neighborhood is, or you could imagine something that's more automated where we're scraping public data, and then we have humans go in and kind of curate that in order to make sure the data is accurate. I'm a big fan of the idea that if taxpayers have paid for the data, it really should be open. I realize that there are some security concerns, and Freedom of Information Act requests are often the way to get that public data. But we tend to not really use that in ours, because if that's how we're building our data, how are we differentiating ourselves? That's not really our model.
So how do you view that open source mapping world, and is that does it supplement what you do, or is
well,
it?
I think we have to. I'll be interested in what the other panelists think. I tend to draw a distinction between open source data that was taxpayer funded and open source data that a particular entity might have compiled through crowdsourcing. I think of those as two different beasts. Usually open source data that's taxpayer funded is very high quality. Usually data that's been crowdsourced and then open to the public is junk, usually.
Do you agree with that?
No, I don't. I think OpenStreetMap is the classic example here. I think 97% of Denmark has been mapped in OpenStreetMap using volunteers. I don't think that's junk. There may be mistakes. If there's a mistake, people fix them. People really care about their maps. And if they're looking at it and they see something's wrong with their street, if they're tech savvy, they'll go and fix it.
Isn't it just like Wikipedia? I mean, Wikipedia is sort of crashing and burning, is my impression at the moment.
I don't know how many people have used Wikipedia in the last week.
And you believe everything you find on Wikipedia? You do? Okay.
No, nothing's perfect. Just because you pay for it doesn't mean it's perfect.
We first had the idea that we were going to be an ecosystem and not build a whole lot of applications on this platform. Going back to the previous topic, it's really, we see maps started with Mylar layers, and then you got points and polygons, and everyone started caring about data. But it's really, as Tom just mentioned, it's really becoming more about data structures. And so, Google very quickly became a platform for search, Facebook obviously for social. There needs to be ways to tap into all these data structures, but we found pretty quickly that the market's too early to support a lot of third-party developers, so we've started to acquire some small applications companies, because you need, at least in our field, you need applications for marketing and searching, targeting sites. You need applications for producing quotes. You need applications for producing actual designs that say how much energy can be produced with a particular configuration and feed it into the grid. So we've seen that there's definitely a lot of capital available to this market, but it's still not, we're probably a couple of years before spatial is like social or search.